Welcome, Andy. I see that you just dialed in. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. You're on mute, but that's okay. Just wanted to let you know I see you on the
Hi,
line.
everyone. Glad you joined in. It's going to be a good night. A lot of good alums who are going to share their wisdom and experiences and great advice. So I'm looking
That's
forward to
right.
listening.
That's right. Hillary, good to see you. Thanks for logging in. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Happy Valentine's Day. I've got my Valentine's Day scarf on and I'm wearing red, and I consider it an honor that all of you are joining me here tonight for this exciting discussion on careers in government and politics. My name is Mercy Iadiel, and I work on the Office of Personal and Career Development team. I oversee a lot of our corporate engagement activities, employer engagement, employer relations, our market readiness team. So anything and all things related to career and the work we do with our employers, it's my honor to be a part of those teams and to lead that effort for the university. Um, this session was supposed to be led by Sharon Vogler, who is on my team. Sharon unfortunately got really sick today, actually last night, and was not able to make it. I know that she was super excited about being here. This is one of her favorite things to do. So she sends her love, but she really wasn't up to facilitating. And so I'm standing in for Sharon tonight. We have an all-star panel that Sharon has worked to bring together. And I don't know if you've all had a chance to check out their backgrounds. I was excited reading up on all of your backgrounds through LinkedIn. I did have a favorite background on the LinkedIn profile. I think it was Colin's LinkedIn profile because you still have Mother So Dear, Wake Forest as a part of your background. So you get the prize for that. Okay. So thank you for doing that. How we're going to do the session tonight is I'm going to ask a few questions, actually 3 or 4 questions, but I want you all students to be thinking about your questions. Tonight is about you and how we can support your journey and how we can answer those questions that are on your mind. You're in a safe space. So please feel free to ask those things that are on your mind. You can either use the chat function to send in your questions, or when we get to that moment where we facilitate sort of the attendee question time, you can ask your question directly to the panelists. So let's go ahead and get started and let's meet our panelists. One thing that we like to do, because you all are all alums, we like to give you a moment just to introduce yourself, just your name, where you're living now, when did you go to Wake Forest, what year, if you want to share that. And then also just quickly your title and the organization you work for, and then we'll unpack that a little bit further as we go through tonight's discussion. So why don't we start with Alex? Alex, you're directly in my left corner, so we're going to start with you, and then just I'll call on the next panelist. And so we'll go to Macaulay next. Go ahead, Alex.
Sounds great. Good afternoon. I almost said good morning. Good, I guess evening now since it's
Good
5.
evening. Exactly.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Colorado. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here to speak about careers, et cetera, in government service. Currently live in Arlington, Virginia. Was in the MSM class of 2017, and I'm currently a program manager at the National Institutes of Health.
Right, Macaulay.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet all of you. My name is Macaulay Green. I graduated from Wake Forest in 2015. I currently work at the Department of Defense as a assistant defense attaché to the U.S. Embassy in Bogota, Colombia. So I currently live in Bogota, Colombia. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for being here tonight, Macaulay. Let's go to Paul next.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Selby. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, probably not far from Alex. I work for the Department of Energy. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for the Department of Energy. I am a, God, I'm afraid to say it, I'm old. I was old when I went to Wake Forest, and I'm older now. I'm a 2006 alumnus of the MBA program, and I could not be more excited than to be here and talk to you about careers in government, because it's an awesome career.
That's great. Thank you, Paul, for being here. Let's go to Evan next.
Good evening. It's great to be with you all. My name is Evan Raleigh, and I currently live in the city of Raleigh. I know it's
Perfect.
kind of like,
That's pretty cool that you named the city after yourself, Evan.
all right. I mean, I tell you, it's
Yeah.
perfect job security. I feel like they can't get rid of me now. So yes, I live in Raleigh and I work for the city of Raleigh. So that's a lot of Raleighs there.
That's right.
So I am a very proud double deacon. I graduated undergrad 2009 with a degree in political science, and have I guess it's now the MSM program, but at the time I graduated in 2010, it was a Master of Arts in Management program back then.
That's right.
And yeah, it's great to be with you this evening.
Thanks for being here, Evan. Glad to have you. And Colin, I think you're next.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Colin Patrick. I graduated in 2020, and currently I support a company called IntelliBridge, which is a government contracting company, and I'm currently detailed to a federal law enforcement client.
That's great. Well, thank you for introducing yourselves, and most importantly, thank you for taking time to come back to your alma mater and share a little bit about your background, experiences, and your journey. That's so important for us to be able to learn from one another. And I wanted to just really ask this question. I'd love for all of you to answer that, is to tell us a bit more about your journey to how you ended up to the role that you're in today. And I'm going to ask Macaulay to get us started.
Sure. A lot of hard work. But so I graduated from Wake in 2015, and I moved to Washington, D.C. without a job. And I was like, I'm going to make it happen. And one of the very first days that I was there, Wake, Washington used to, I'm not sure if they still do, a beginning of summer networking event in person. And I met a gentleman who was also a Wake Forest alum, who was working for a government contractor at the time called Centra Technologies. And I didn't know a lot about government contracting, but I knew I wanted to work in intelligence, and I knew I wanted to work for the government, and honestly had kind of like missed my opportunity to apply for one of the intel agencies my senior year, because those deadlines are very long in advance and I wasn't tracking. And so when I graduated, I was like, what am I going to do? And so I started working for Centra, which was fantastic. I was able to get my security clearance, and I started supporting government clients such as DHS, FEMA, and TSA. After about a year and a half, 2 years, I moved over to the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is sort of like CIA for the military. And so I've been with the Department of Defense and the Defense Intelligence Agency since. I started as an analyst, and then I realized that I was good at my job, but I liked talking to people. And so I moved over to the Defense Attaché Service about 3 years ago as a desk officer, supporting our both clandestine and overt operations out of the United States. And then I was selected about 2 years ago to serve as the Assistant Defense Attaché in Bogota, Colombia. And in my job now, I essentially facilitate our relationship between the U.S. Department of Defense and the Colombian Ministry of Defense, working with high-level individuals at the MOD to support and continue our relationship there. And so really it's been a journey of realizing jobs that maybe weren't perfect, but taught me what I wanted to do, and hard work. So yeah.
That's great. And I have to tell you, I had never heard of your title, so I had to dig a little bit deeper. It's pretty unique in terms of your title. I was curious, are there other folks like you in your role? How unique is it for you to be in that particular role?
Yeah, so So I guess for everyone's situational awareness, almost every country have military attaches that are posted at embassies around the world, but typically they are military. Whatever that country has, they are military representatives. Because the United States, our Department of Defense is actually primarily made up of civilians. Obviously, the services have active duty militaries, but the Pentagon itself is made up of almost 65% civilians, and our commander in chief is also a civilian. And so we like to have civilians as part of these defense attaché offices to kind of be that frontward facing individual that doesn't have to work on service specific issues. They can work on high level DoD to Ministry of Defense priorities. And so I think globally right now we have about maybe 40 to 50 assistant defense attachés. An assistant really just means civilian. I don't know why they call it. I'm not the defense attaché's assistant. It's just what they call civilians. And so we have about 40 to 50 of those roles worldwide.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that a bit more, Macaulay. I appreciate that. Colin, tell us more about your role at IntelliBridge.
Sure. Yeah. So I, similar to Macaulay, have kind of started and continued in the government contracting arena. And so I actually started as an intern at the Department of Defense at the Pentagon between my junior and senior years, which was great. Like Macaulay mentioned, the timelines for security clearance stuff and things of that nature are usually pretty long. So I was fortunate to get that out of the way early. And so from there, I was working in the Office of Industrial Policy. So a lot of the stuff that makes the news nowadays about chips and supply chain and all of that fun stuff. I interned and then I started my career in that same office as a contractor. And then from there, I decided that I liked the people in my company that I was working with more than I liked the specific office that I was in. So I had the opportunity to move laterally within my company to a different client, and that was the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. So they do a lot of background investigations, but also looking at things like critical technology protection and making sure the contractors such as the Raytheons, the Boeings, and the big companies like that who want to do business with the government at a higher level have to meet certain thresholds to be able to maintain that type of information. So DCSA primarily focused on that kind of mission. And then I, as like Macaulay, was very interested in kind of dipping my foot into the intelligence world. And I was given the opportunity about almost 2 years ago now to go over to the FBI. So I've been at the FBI since then and have been working there as an intelligence analyst.
That's great. So when we see IntelliBridge, is that the name of the department, or how does?
No, so yeah, so that's a good. So I sometimes forget that folks right outside of DC oftentimes have never encountered government contracting, but basically, and it's funny, but I feel like you have to say it. I am not somebody who's I'm not building anything for the government, like a general contractor might. What essentially it boils down to is private companies have the ability, or the government will solicit private companies to bid on work that they need to have done. And that can span any arena. It can be anything from janitorial things to building rockets, right? Like it spans a very large realm. And so my company, IntelliBridge, which is a private company, happens to hold the contract with this client. And as a result, so I'm just one of the cogs in the machine. But the nice thing is that day in and day out, it's pretty much like I'm a government employee.
Okay. But you're really in a contract role playing a government.
That's correct.
Okay. Got it. Okay. And Paul, how about you? You're certainly in a very interesting space in terms of technology. and for the Department of Energy, I believe. So how did you end up there?
Just lucky, born and lucky. They found out I went to Wake Forest, and they said, "You went to Wake Forest? Come on over to the Department of Energy." Um,
Love
so, it's an interesting journey. I'm in addition to working for the government, I'm also a military veteran. Was in the United States Navy, and specifically how I ended up working for the government when I got off of active duty with the Navy. Um, a friend of mine who worked for the government encouraged me to continue a life of service, and that's the message I would want to give to you guys, is that as a veteran, whenever I was in uniform or whenever seen in public, people would stop and say, "Hey, thank you for your service," and it's an incredibly overwhelming thing. It's something I'm very grateful for, and could not be more proud. There's anybody who's ever worn a uniform for our country knows that you stand a little taller, you walk a little prouder, your chest sticks out a little bit more when you put that uniform on, and that's never more obvious than like when I was out on exercises in foreign countries and working, our NATO partners or our South American partners, and the level of respect the United States has on a national stage from a defense aspect. So when I got off of active duty, I wanted to continue that. I have a great love for this country. And feel a tremendous amount of obligation to give back to what has been given to me. So I started in the government service. My background has been in IT and technology for all my life. I went to Ohio State for undergrad. I went to Wake Forest for my MBA, and I also have a master's in information systems with a specialty in cybersecurity from Penn State. So I'm a lifetime student. I encourage all of you to be lifetime students, never stop learning. But I was given the opportunity to continue to be of service to our country in the IT department. I was the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for the Internal Revenue Service, and was presented with the opportunity to lead the cybersecurity organization of the Department of Energy. And it was just an opportunity I could not pass up. And again, for those of you who have any interest in being of service to your country, I can tell you right now, the government does cooler stuff than anybody else on the planet. If I could take you to my office, I would show you. You'd walk through the office after you got past the hall that has our 17 Nobel laureates that have won Nobel prizes as scientists for the Department of Energy. You would see a Shelby Cobra sitting in the lobby of my office. And I'm like, the first time I saw it, I'm like, well, why is there a Shelby Cobra there? Well, that Shelby Cobra is a fully functional Shelby Cobra that was 3D printed in one of our labs.
Oh, wow.
It is, you cannot tell the difference between that and an actual Shelby Cobra. And it is fully functional. You can drive it around. So we have 17 national labs, and we're responsible for, we have 10 of those labs are open science labs that are just pure research. I was out at Stanford University a few weeks ago at a place called SLAC, which is the linear accelerator. It's the Stanford Linear Accelerator. And they take quarks and they they send them down the linear accelerator, smash them, take the atoms, smash them into quarks, and do pure science research on quarks. That's just what one of the labs do. We have our nuclear labs that work on both clean energy and non-proliferation. We have our environmental management labs. We have our renewable energy labs. We have, like the Department of Defense, we have our intelligence group that works on the nuclear side, the weaponry side. The Department of Macaulay is a defense attaché. We have energy attachés throughout the globe. Last week I was in Poland and Lithuania working with our energy attachés, who are Macaulay's counterparts that are responsible for working and partnering not with the defense industry in our partner nations, but with the energy industries in our partner nations. The government can offer you opportunities to work anywhere, doing literally any type of work that would appeal to your soul, and you can absolutely make a difference. I mean, I was sitting in a meeting last week with the Deputy Prime Minister of Poland,
Mm,
talking about how to help secure their energy grid from their neighbors to the east, who are constantly attacking them, right? And we're talking about Russia.
mhm.
Um, it's I'm not telling you that because I want you to think I'm telling you that because these are the jobs in the government that you can have a direct. Macaulay can tell you the same thing. She has sat, I guarantee you, she has sat in meetings where she's making a direct impact on the security of the United States, and having meetings that are a direct impact, and that's what the government can offer you. It offers you a chance to really make a difference and to give back to your country and to do really meaningful work with some of the most incredible people. How many people have seen the movie Oppenheimer? Anybody? Raise your hands.
Yeah.
That's all the Department of Energy. That
Wow.
is the origins of the Department of Energy. Those are the kind of people that we have in the government. It is the whole myth about good enough for government work, and don't the government is 40 hours a week. The government is an incredible place filled with incredible patriots.
Yes.
And what Macaulay does, what Alex does, what Evan does, what I do in service to our country is every bit of meaningful and impactful as somebody who puts on a uniform. And that's coming from somebody who has worn a uniform for a large part of my life. What we do is every bit as impactful and every bit as much of service to our country as somebody in uniform. I invite you, if you want to have an exciting career, come join the U.S. government.
Wow. You need to do a commercial for all government work. Andy and I were talking yesterday because we were looking at top jobs that are in our handshake system, which is our employment platform and student engagement. In government and politics is number one in terms of top postings for the year. We have over 4,400, I believe, or 4,100 jobs that are just focused on government politics. So for those of you on this call, students wise, please definitely check that out in Handshake. If you need help navigating those jobs, just email me and I'll be happy to try to help you get to those. I actually have a uh, agent that I'm going to put into the chat box in just a minute, but it's a great resource, lots of great opportunities, and thank you, Paul, for getting us that excitement that you have and the passion that you have for your work. That really resonates. Let me jump over to Alex, and then obviously Evan. Would love for you to answer that question. How did you get to your role with where you are today? So would love to hear more.
Thank you. I'm not really sure how I can kind of top what Paul said, but kind of just
Yeah.
going off his whole general idea about some wanting to do service. And so with my kind of going into the master's program, graduated from George Mason, did economics, and then I did the Master of Arts and then now Master of Science and Management program because I like to joke that I wanted to make money. And so like all my other classmates, everyone's looking at like finance, investment banking, et cetera. And I'm like trying to decide what I want to do, making sure my resume gets to the top of the pile on all the job fairs and career fairs. And my sister, who's in the Army now and was a Department of the Army civilian, she was like, hey, I did this like Army fellowship program. I'm not really sure if you're interested, but you've kind of seen the stuff that I've done. Why not give it an apply, check it out and see, what you could kind of do. And, maybe you might like it. And so I ended up going through the application process. And the more I found about the job and the more I wanted to serve, like I wanted to give back, as Paul said, because my family's full of Navy veterans, sisters in the Army and works for DHS. And then now I work through various DoD, DHS, and other government agencies. And so I kind of found it as my way of just kind of giving back and serving in a sense, just because my family did all that. Military just wasn't work in lifetime where I wasn't something I didn't wanted to do then, but I still wanted to make an impact. And then so upon completing the program, I did an Army fellowship program that moved me to Richmond. Did like in the field training, classroom training, so more schooling, after schooling. You never stop learning, as Paul says, which is a true thing, because just the higher up you get, no matter what job or career field, government or outside of government, you're going to go do classes, leadership training, etc. And then after that, they moved me to Huntsville, Alabama, where I just worked doing logistics for like deployment operations and stuff like that. And then kind of taking a cue from my sister again, I'd probably like to thank her for kind of helping guide me through my federal career. I was kind of looking to move around agencies, and it was around 2020. So it was about the time COVID was like in full swing, and like all my family was in Virginia in the DC area. And then so I looked to make a pivot to move back. And she worked in FEMA, and they have 10 regional offices all around the country, similar to other agencies. And she's like, hey, why not apply to FEMA, take a look at that job? And then I was like, okay, I started applying around and ultimately got a job as a process improvement analyst, just working on their enterprise resource systems for grants. So I know all the grants and policies and everything, like if you know someone who actually gets in a disaster, I kind of know what to look for if they're actually eligible for stuff. So I've had people reach out to me after disasters, being like, hey, like, could you like help me out or lead me in the right direction? So I tell people if something like that happens, feel free to reach out regarding that. But then about 6 months into FEMA, the Colonial Pipeline hack happened. And so that kind of shifted what I wanted to do. And so I wanted to work like kind of on the forefront of like cybersecurity. Like and you remember in May 2021 for that like brief week, gas was like super expensive. It was really hard to find it. And there were like massive lines at the gas stations. And then so from there, I pivoted my career. I applied to a job for the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. Paul probably might know since he's a CISO. And I heard a CISO, I was like, I got excited because like I know what that is, and all the kinds of things I work in there. And then so my job at CISA, I was working in the front office, which is like where all the leadership is, supporting the director, the deputy director. And pretty much for the DoD people, I was an action officer. So I was one of the people who's their aides, attended like 20 plus meetings a day, traveled where they ever traveled. So kind of along with the whole like the opportunities, you'll get working in the government. I really had no clue what I was applying for, just because a lot of times in USA jobs, if anyone's ever looked at government jobs, it just said like management and program analyst doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, that's what I do for my job in FEMA. Maybe I'll work in policy or something. And then like the second day of work after orientation, like, you're supporting the number 2 of the agency. So I was like, okay, I'm not really sure what I'm getting into. And in that, I was able to travel a lot, kind of work with stakeholders, kind of spreading the gospel of government cybersecurity, working with partners, telling them things to how to kind of improve their cybersecurity posture, like, not taping a password to your keyboard, multi-factor authentication. And so that was like a cool job kind of going in and out in there. And my boss like really heavily focused on healthcare. And that was something that, just because he had that kind of focus, I was like really kind of like looking into that, kind of moving on, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. Just because our leadership even knew in the jobs, they're like, yeah, so, when you're here for about 2 to 3 years, just because of the tempo and the kind of requirements of the job, like I probably traveled like once a week, did international travel abroad. And so my schedule was like very inconsistent, as compared to like a regular government job. And so they're like, yeah, about 2 years or 3 years, that's when you want, they're like, if you stay here any longer than that, like you're crazy. Like our boss had literally told us that. And so I started actively kind of like looking around a bit. And then I applied to the NIH, a lot of the different scientific organizations. And so this is one of a case of, I always tell people, even if you get denied from a job, just be very cordial in the process, because my current supervisor now, she reached out because 3 years prior, when I was applying to jobs around the time I got my FEMA job, I initially made it to the last round interview. And then I was one of the final 2 people. She gave the spot to someone else. Felt really bad because they were both 2 good candidates. And then 2 weeks later, someone else left on that team. And then so she came back to me asking if I wanted to join. And then I was like, oh, I already took my FEMA job. Sorry about that. And then 3 years later, she was like, oh, I was excited to see your name in there, and move forward to that. So now I currently work at NIH, the National Institute of Health, for the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And they're the primary institute that is, working on the scientific and, scientific and the kind of research helping kind of combat the opioid crisis. And for my role, I work in the administrative side. There's like a research and administrative side. The administrative supports the research side, but I work in emergency management and risk management. So making sure like, evacuation plans are good, working with key stakeholders to make sure like specific risk areas are managing that kind of stuff. And a lot of that and stuff in my current job was just based on what I did in the past. And then that's what I've been doing now. This summer will be a year, and it's been good so far. But just just government service. I wanted to serve. I like to joke, again, I wanted to make money, and I worked in the government. In due time, it'll eventually come. Like, being honest, just kind of starting out, others may know it might be kind of tough. Some of those early GS steps, especially if you live in, more expensive places like the DC area. But as long as you, do the right stuff, do the right thing, do good work, find the right things, you'll get up in no time. And this year will be 7 years in the government. So, it really flies by. Just, enjoy everything you can, do that, and just you'll be having a good career.
Alex, I really do appreciate you sharing the example of how you stay connected and you interviewed well and you were memorable to this colleague and how that has served you well in getting other opportunities. And I think a lot of times we tend to look at the job search process as very transactional. And so what you were alluding to, I think, is more around the relationship side of how you manage a search. And you just never know the kind of impression that you're leaving on a hiring manager. And again, how that's going to serve you in the future. So thank you for calling that out for us today. Evan, please bring us home with your
Sure.
experiences. Yes, I'm so excited to see you. I was here at Wake Forest when Evan was in the MA program back then. So it's great to see you again. And I told him he looks like he's a big man now. He's not a student, he's an adult, right? So
An old and graying man now, right? You haven't changed a day, and I'm like, every day I see a new gray in my beard popping out. So what happened to the time? Well, again, it's wonderful to be with you all. I know our time is short together, so I'll be brief so that we can get to the next stage, just because I know you probably already have questions based on what you've heard. And I'll start just by saying I really couldn't have said it better than myself in terms of the virtues of working in government. I'm in local government. I've been in worked for municipalities for 12 or 13 years now. You heard Paul talk about just really the reward that comes with government service. Everybody here, except for myself, is working kind of on a national level, but I would say all of those same things apply at the local level too. In terms of the breadth of the things that you can do, we have chemists, we have folks interested in sustainability, we have transportation planners, urban planners. I mean, everything every field in some way is represented in the work of local municipalities. And it really is a place that if you want to have impact, really direct, tangible impact that you can see and touch and live day to day, local governments, there's really not a better place for it than right here on the ground. Because I like to say that we're in service to not the country, but we are in service to our neighbors, the folks that live next door to us and down the street from us. And there's a lot of reward that comes from that. So just in terms of how I got here, like I said, I've been in local government my entire 12 or 13 years now. And I'll just say the power of internships. I know I heard Colin mention finding his path via an internship. And I will tell you, for me, internships were critical in helping me not only land my first job, but sort of help kind of narrow my field of interest a little bit by kind of trial and error and some opportunities that helped define for me my local government path. So I was a poli-sci major. While I was an undergrad, I did, I knew that I had an innate interest in service. Government, I thought at some point I'd probably end up in a DOD or a DOE or somewhere in DC. But I had a couple of internship experiences that sort of, revealed local government for me. And I had an internship with my congressman that represented my home district. So that was kind of the federal touch. With some positives of that, but didn't find my spark there. I spent a summer interning with at the state level with the North Carolina Department of Commerce in a field office that's based in High Point, which is just down the road from Winston. Didn't love that either. I think what was missing was just feeling of direct connection to the work that I was doing in the office day in and day out. And I was sort of searching, and Mercy, I know you'll remember this gentleman, Hansford Johnson, who actually connected me. I told him so just to kind of go back quickly, 2009 was a really rough year. I know that for some of y'all, that's like a distant memory, but I think Andy probably knows. Mercy remembers, Paul, I'm sure, remembers how brutal things were economically. It was a Great Recession. I think that probably my graduating class had the lowest, immediate employment prospects of any class that's probably ever come out of Wake. And so, I was fortunate to have an opportunity to remain for an additional year and do the Master of Arts or MSM program. And, one thing that I knew I would gain by having that program was understanding the business. I was a liberal arts major. Although I didn't love my state internship experience, it did demonstrate for me the connection between business and politics. And so I said, well, jobs are tough to come by. I think if this would be a great way for me to spend a year sort of beefing up my, we'll say, business language and business savvy. But while I was in that program, I knew still that I was interested in government at some level. And so just so happened that I got connected with a gentleman who was the city manager of the city of Winston-Salem at the time. I had no idea what a city manager was or didn't know much about local government, but I knew it was the one level of government that I hadn't really had any touch point with. And so, I said I'd love to meet him. And long story short, that introduction, I spent the last semester in the MSN program, following the city manager around City Hall and learning about local government. I just fell in love with it. And so that internship turned into a mentorship. I didn't say I went off and got my master's in public policy from the University of Michigan after I left Wake. And he told me when I left, he said, if you ever want to come back, if you ever need an internship to kind of complete your course requirements, which I did, he said, we'd love to have you back. And so I came back my summer between first and second years at the University of Michigan, working as an intern in Winston-Salem, and never looked back. And so that internship turned into a job, which I spent doing for the first 10 years of my career. And so I've been now an assistant city manager for 6 years. The last 3 of my 10 years in Winston, I was an assistant manager, and I'm doing the same thing here. I know our time is, I could get into what it all is, but I don't want to belabor the hour or make sure that we, again, have time for questions.
Student questions, of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Evan. I mean, what you said was fantastic in terms of your journey. And I don't know of anyone else that can say their internship led them to a job and they've been there for 10 years, I think is what you said. I mean, that's really incredible. And it doesn't happen all the time that way. So it really does sound like this was a sweet spot for you. So that's excellent. I did want to ask one just final question just because of time, and then I would love to have our students chime in with your questions on your mind. What kind of skills and or values would you say are really essential for pursuing this kind of work? And I heard, some of the values from Paul, just how he described his work. And, I'm not going to, anyone that wants to share, please, from the panelists, please just share your thoughts on this. Because I do think, especially as you're pursuing government work, it's, obviously work that involves your heart and your mind and your loyalty to your country. I mean, service, all that stuff. So I would love to hear what makes, the most, I would just say alignment, with your career and where you're trying to go.
Well, I'm happy to jump in. I think Paul kind of put it best earlier. I think the thing that you have to want to work towards something that's bigger than yourself, because truly every day you're going to work and you're focused on everybody else but you. You're focused on the needs of a city, the needs of a state, the needs of a country, in a world that has ever growing complex problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's a level of determination and perseverance that's required, as well as tenacity to push through tough moments while really being in service of your country, your community, your neighbors.
Great. Thank you, Macaulay. Other perspectives, key skills, values, mindsets.
Yeah, I think Macaulay hit it on the head. I mean, that's the reality is the skill set, whatever your skill set is, there's a spot for you in the government, whether it's, scientist, chemist, physician, literally the government has, you'd be shocked at, all the different roles that they have in the government. Literally any job on the planet you can do in the government. So any skill set you have will be applicable to government service. So it's not so much the skill set you have. Like if you want to be in the world that Alex and I play in cybersecurity, I can tell you that there's some certifications, education that that they're very specific to cybersecurity, to the information technology community. But that's I think secondary.
Yeah,
you have to have a service heart. there's that if you're wanting to do something greater than as Macaulay said it, because I can't think of what she exact word she said, but if you're interested in doing something greater than yourself,
Yeah.
the government is a place to do that. And it really is not, it's about service, and which is not to say that you can't be very successful. I mean, there's this myth that the government doesn't pay well. That's not my experience. Alex mentioned it. When you live it, the government will pay you, and you can look it up. I mean, it's all public records, public information.
Mhm.
You have two different things. You have the GS pay scale. After you And that's GS 1 through 15. And once you get past the GS 15 scale, you get into what's called the senior executive service, which is I've been in senior executive service for a number of years. It's kind of the equivalent to being a general or an admiral in the civilian side of the government, and the pay scale is equivalent to those kind of responsibilities and roles. But they also have what they call a locality pay. So if you live in DC, whatever Alex's salary is, he gets I think in DC, Alex is at 34%. It's like a 34% increase to his GS pay scale because he lives in Washington, DC. What I would tell you about the financial side of working for the government, you will always be comfortable. You're not going to become Elon Musk, but you're not going to be hungry, and you're going to have plenty of money to do whatever you want to do. It's a very financially rewarding career, but most importantly, it is a emotionally soul-filling, soul-feeding career that you're making a difference.
That's great. Any other final thoughts on that question before I move to the students?
And I would just add to boil it down even further, right? And as a contractor, I oftentimes come into whether it's a new agency or something, is there going to be the government employee versus contractor divide, right? But something that has kind of given me solace, especially at the FBI, is it's really unified under that one team, one mission. Doesn't matter who you work for officially, doesn't matter where your paycheck is coming from, right? But at the end of the day, like everyone said, it's the mission and the goal of our organization or the specific team that you're on that is really what drives you to come to work. And even lower than the state local level, it's taking pride in coming to work and supporting your teammates, those who you're working side by side with, who are servicing a mission equally, if not greater, in importance than your own. So if nothing else, it's something to take pride in, that not only the job that you're doing for your, but also the job that those to your left and right are as well.
Love that. Thank you, Colin. All right, students, it's your moment to shine. We know that you all have questions, you're curious, so who's going to kick us off with their question? I know the panelists will appreciate any questions you might want to put out there.
I guess I can start.
Thank you, Isaiah.
So my name is Isaiah Little. I'm currently in the Master of Science in Management program. I also went to Wake undergrad, majoring in sociology. And so a major theme was the life of service. And that resonated for me because I'm passionate about educational equity and community development. I was just curious to hear from a couple of panelists, like, how did you position yourself to effectuate change with the values you had while also developing certain leadership skills?
Mm.
Well,
Maybe
nothing like starting
you-
off with a
go ahead.
softball, Isaiah. They're throwing out a really easy question for us. I think how I put myself in a position to effectuate change is being willing, and showing up with a mindset of willingness, right? I mean, I showed up for work, and again, it's the service mindset. So I showed up for work, and showed up in the government with, tell me what you need done. And it started when I joined the military. I went down to the recruiter because the war was going on, and I said, sign me up. I didn't care what it was. What I wanted to do was to be a part of something bigger than myself. And when you come into it with that mindset, Uh, and wherever you put, I mean, one of my favorite sayings is bloom where you're planted, grow where you're planted. And if you start with that mindset, you can effectuate change. It doesn't matter what your role is, whether you're given the title and the position of leadership, or whether you're somebody that can be a leader because that's who you are. That's how you effectuate change. And in the government, you get to do that on a grand scale because you get involved in really big projects and you get involved in really big things. And as Alex and Macaulay pointed out, and everyone, all the panels, I don't mean to leave anybody out, you will be, if you come to the government, you will be given that opportunity. It's a matter of what you do with that. You will be given the opportunity to shine. And if you shine in the government, there is no better place to have a spotlight put on you, because in the government, we love performers. And you will get rewarded quickly, and you will be able to see the impact of what you do. Now, as far as the leadership aspect of that, I mean, the one piece of advice I would give anybody is mentorship. Mentorship is probably one of the biggest keys to success. Be a mentor. Doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. If you're a freshman in college, be a mentor to somebody in high school.
Yes.
If you're in your graduate program, be a mentor to somebody in the undergraduate program. If you're somebody at this stage in my career, you be a mentor and have a mentor. I still have mentors that I call and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. It helps you become a better leader. There's a book by Tony Dungy called The Servant Leader. If you want to be, in my opinion, if you want to be successful in life, read that book. Because if you're in leadership and you think it's about you, you're in the wrong position.
That's right.
Being a leader is about who you are there to serve. We're there to serve the people that are in our charge. We are not in charge of them. They are in our charge. We are responsible for them, for their success, their happiness, their work-life balance, their next job, their promotion. That's what we're responsible for. Don't settle for anything less. The one thing I would tell you is, any organization you're in, do not settle for a toxic environment. Leave immediately. You deserve better. You guys are the future of this country. You guys are the leaders you're developing into the leaders that we need to continue to excel. So I'm sorry, I get a little bit passionate. I apologize.
Love that.
Hopefully that helped, Isaiah. I don't know. It was you hit us with a hard question to begin with. Hopefully, usually it's a softball, like, hey, who do you like, the Yankees or something?
That's right. That's right. Well, let's keep going with some of the questions, because I want to see what other questions are on students' minds. Thank you, Isaiah, for that question. Others.
Here's a little bit. To give context, my name's Helen. I'm in the Masters of Science in Business Analytics program here at Wake Forest, and I was also a double deke. And within my program, we talk a lot about generative AI. And I was kind of curious how the integration of AI has changed the landscape within operations where you guys work, if at all.
Great question. Thank you.
Now, you guys are going to think I'm a mic hog here. This is the space I deal in every single day. Right now, with the AI is, I mean, the Department of Energy is one of the leaders in the U.S. government with artificial intelligence because of our national labs and the scientists we have working in those national labs. I can tell you, we're in the nascent stage of using artificial intelligence because we don't really know. Right now, it's can artificial intelligence be used from the cybersecurity perspective? There's a lot of cool things we can do with artificial intelligence that will make it much easier for us to do our jobs. When we see problems come in, when we have AI analyzing it, and we don't have to rely on an analyst who's had 30 years of experience, because we can take that data set and use that data set to analyze problems and put them out much quicker. That's the power of AI, right? It can do great things. When I was in grad school at Penn State studying AI, there was a study that was done using battlefield scenarios. And they had a control group that was strictly AI and a control group that was strictly humans. Battlefield experienced battlefield commanders, lieutenant colonels, people who had been on the field for a long time. And they used the battlefield scenarios. And what we found was that artificial intelligence made incredibly quick decisions like that. Just, go do this, go do that. And the problem was is when the artificial intelligence made an incorrect decision, it ended up with catastrophic results, like huge loss of life. The humans very rarely ever made an incorrect decision because of the battlefield experience, but they were incredibly slow. They couldn't crunch data the way artificial intelligence, so it took a long time to get to the decision, which led to kind of disastrous results because it took too long. When we combined the two, and we took the artificial intelligence data crunching capability with the experience of the humans, and we combined that element, it wasn't a 1 + 1 = 2, it was a 1 + 1 = 10. And that's the power of AI. So we're doing really cool stuff with AI. I mean, literally right now, because I just had to do, I do a lot of public speaking, and I just had to speak at a conference about this. I think I have about 270 different artificial intelligence projects going on within the Department of Energy today. And they range from everything you could possibly imagine. The other piece of artificial intelligence is it can be used for evil. From a cybersecurity perspective, that's what we're struggling with. There was a case recently where we had, it was called the Leon data set. Alex, I don't know if you were tracking that and over NIH, but so there's data sets that teach artificial intelligence how to do things. A criminal activity took, it's called poisoning the data. They took a bunch of CSAM, child sexual abuse material, and embedded that in a perfectly legit data set that everyone was using. So all of a sudden, throughout all these government networks, we had child pornography that was loaded up into data sets. These are the kind of things that artificial intelligence introduces that we have to be really weary of, that people can use artificial intelligence for evil, right? And we've all seen Terminator. So I'm not ready to completely give it over. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That's
Again,
right.
I talked
That's
way
fine.
too much.
Yeah, great use cases and challenges that you're facing, at the very top, national level and global level too. Other questions? I can take one or two more questions.
I had a quick question, actually.
Sure.
I'm Logan. I'm currently in the MSM program, also a double deek. And I'm kind of curious based off of just like kind of what Alex said and Evan said. So I also kind of went to the MSM program and be like, I want to make money out of this. And then I hear the other side of like internships are really valuable to start off with. So I feel like a lot of people have the mentality, I want a full-time job after I graduate. But what's the value maybe in doing the internship coming out of graduation or a rotational program? And maybe could someone speak to that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm happy to
And
jump
I
in.
would add to that, is it a requirement to get into the jobs that you see in your organization?
Well, Mercy, I guess I'll answer your question. No, it's not a
Good, good,
requirement.
good.
It's just a really, really nice way to get your foot in the door, candidly. I will tell you, so Logan, most of my internship experience happened generally before the MSM program. I did have the one internship that or mentorship that turned into an internship, but it was while I was still in school. So I was an MSM student, you know, following the manager around, and then when I went to my other master's program, I was doing it while I was a student. So I mean, I completely understand the desire at this point to be looking to full-time opportunities, and I would suggest you certainly do that. But I will say there are a number of, and I know this is true on the national and on the local level, there are a number of postgraduate fellowship programs that you can research and look into. I mean, I would say the value of those is the same general value that you get from an internship at any other point in your your career path, your journey, is because it gives you exposure that doesn't have the same necessary level of commitment as going into a full-time opportunity. You get a sample of life in a bunch of different places, in a bunch of different potential pathways, if you will. And you kind of leave those opportunities kind of knowing a little bit more about potential paths and a little bit more about what you're really truly genuinely interested in doing. I think that's really the beauty of fellowship or rotational programs. And I know, like I said, I could give you a long list of them, and I'm sure Mercy has all that information.
I'm getting ready to put the post in chat. Yeah. That's
But,
right. That's a good sign.
I would absolutely tell you that it's worth, if you're not 100% certain or fairly certain what it is you want to do, you want to kind of have an opportunity to do some experimentation that you may not have had the opportunity to do maybe when you were in undergrad or elsewhere. I say a rotational program coming out, there really isn't a better time in the span of your career to do that than right now, is what I would tell you.
Very good. Thank you, Evan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sure.
Logan, thank you for that question. One final question, and then we're going to wrap up. Anyone have?
Hello, I would love to ask a question if that's okay. We still have time. I apologize for not having my camera on. I've been on the move, but my name's Alondra. Similar to Isaiah and Logan, I also went to Wake undergrad, and now I'm in the Master's in Management program. And as someone with a lot of interest, I've found it to be a bit overwhelming to try to figure out what path I want to go down when working for the government. And so I would love to know if anybody has an experience or kind of like a pivotal moment that they realize that the place where they're working in has been fulfilling, and they kind of realize that it was where they were meant to be. Because similar to everyone else that has spoken today, I really want to find meaning and fulfillment from the work that I'm doing. And it sounds like you are all very invested in the bigger impact of the work that you produce. So I'd love if you could be able to share a little bit about that.
Thank you, Alondra. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I could go ahead. Yeah, because I was kind of jumping over in my head thinking about it. But I think the one time, especially where in my career, I really felt like, even though working for the Department of Defense was good, there's family and service, but during my time at FEMA was about the time when COVID is still in full swing in 2021, and just being able to help people with like a lot of the technicalities of COVID, because FEMA was responsible for providing federal grants to federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial partners in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So anything from like sneeze guards to filling up tents and sites and all that stuff. And then the whole entire vaccine clinic, we are in charge of helping understand the whole grant program for that. And then along at the same time, responding to the disasters and trying to help fix that progress. So people didn't have the burden of paperwork when they were applying for applications, because at the end of the day, if your house is destroyed, you don't want to go through 10 pages of forms that ask you for your name 5 times on every single form. So we're trying to streamline a lot of that process. And so trying to help kind of combat the pandemic and the stages when, it was still really in full swing and letting out vaccines while actively responding to and helping process the, grant process for natural disasters, like kind of that 2-tiered sense, really kind of, that's where I felt like I was really like, doing work, and I could actually see actionable work that I was doing, helping and impacting people around me.
The only thing I would add. I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I am gonna give a slightly devil's advocate response to this question, not because I disagree with it, but because I have really found that the things that you want and the places that you find fulfillment change and evolve over time. When I graduated from Wake in undergrad, I was like, I want to be an intelligence analyst. This is like the only thing I've ever wanted to do in my life. And I got there and I realized maybe this isn't that. And I don't think that you have to go into something initially and say, this is what I'm going to do forever. I mean, we're the generation of, you're going to have like 12 to 15 jobs in your lifetime, which is like totally new and different. And I think that not putting so much pressure on whatever it is being the thing, and just saying, this is something I'm interested in, this is something I think will be fulfilling, and then trying that is really kind of the best way to see if it is the right fit. Because I mean, all of this business, whether you're going into investment banking or government or teaching, is a learning experience. You do it the first time and you're like, whoa, holy, that was not for me. Or wow, I absolutely love this. I can't imagine not doing this. And so I think that taking that pressure off of yourself, and I'm one to talk because I did the same thing, but I think taking the pressure off of yourself and just like leaning into opportunities that you think would be interesting is gonna pay more dividends than not.
That's right.
And I realize we're over. I realize we're over time, but the one thing I want to point out, Alondra, is the beauty of the government. I mean, if you heard when we heard Alex and we heard Macaulay, they both had, I don't know, 5 or 6 jobs within the government, right? I mean, I've had the longest job I've had, the longest position I've had in the government so far, I think was 2 years. There's lots of opportunities. Once you're in the government, you can move around. And you'll be given lots of opportunities. The government is not a place where you get in, and you could if you wanted to. I mean, if you wanted to have the same job, I've known people who've done the exact same job for like 45 years. But if you're of the mind to try different things, once you're in the government, transferring. I mean, Alex works for the National Institutes of Health now. He started with the, I think, Department of Defense. Macaulay was with the Defense Investigation Agency, the DIA. Now she's with DOD as a defense attaché. You'll get opportunities to do lots of things. Because I agree with Macaulay. Boy, if you would have asked me when I was 22 years old what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I'm 57 years old, still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. But the government affords you a lot of opportunities, Alondra, to scratch different itches and figure out, what's meaningful.
That's right. Well, let me thank our panelists, Alex, Colin, Paul, Evan, Macaulay. You all are fantastic, and we'd love to have you back at some point. I already see that you've added your contact information. Students, please, reach out to folks through LinkedIn and through the direct contact information that they've provided. I've also shared with you job search agents that you can use for your search, both internships and full-time roles. If you have additional questions, we have career coaches, both through the School of Business and also through the Office of Personal and Career Development, and you can access and make appointments through Handshake. If you have other questions post this call today, students, feel free to reach out to me. My name is listed here, Mercy Iadiel, and I'll be happy to direct you to the right staff member on our team to support you. Again, there's many ways you could have spent your Valentine's Day. I think this was a smart way to spend it, at least the first part of your evening. I hope you continue to enjoy your time this evening, as well as you continue to find the role for you post-graduation, and let us know how we can help you. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.